No, in this pile over here, there might be one of these heart and soul things. I don't know.
This is
If
the
it
reason
is,
now. You're listening to Jimmy Deal's
yeah,
show
I'm
on
thinking
Hamilton
record.
Radio.
Okay, everybody, welcome. I'm Doc G, and of course, Jimmy Deal's back.
I'm back.
He's back to Jimmy Deal, right? He's all feeling good. We have a great guest tonight, Jimmy. And who is this man? We know him, Kenny Vance.
Kenny Vance from Kenny Vance and the Planetones. Such an honor to have him on the show. Kenny, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure. It's good to be here. I feel like at home. You guys are broadcasting from Mill Basin in Brooklyn or Canarsie.
Canarsie, absolutely. And Doc is in New Jersey, and so we're in New York and New Jersey. So we have it all covered.
Doc, where are you located?
I'm in Hamilton, New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey area, central New Jersey.
Okay. We used to.
So Kenny, you started music at a very early age. It was like, what, 15 years old? And tell us about your interest in music. How did that all get started for you?
Well, let's see. It's going back a couple of years. I think when I was around 13, we had grown up in the 50s, early, in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s. And the music at that time, was kind of very soft and very, I'm losing my train of thought here. It was very simplistic. Patti Page, the Ames brothers, things like that. And there were also other, great people at that time. But what we were hearing in New York on WMCA was very kind of middle of the road. And then all of a sudden, you turn the dial a little notch to the right, no, to the left, because WMGM was 1050 on your dial. And then to the left was WINS on 1010. And a guy named Alan Freed came on.
Yes.
And he started playing records that you never ever heard before. And it was just something about it that inspired me and that really touched me. And we started listening to Alan Freed, and then we actually heard one day that he was going to have the first ever rock and roll show at the Brooklyn Paramount. Now you got to understand, like, that never existed anywhere else in the country. A rock and roll show was like surreal. And so one day, I'm not sure exactly, it was maybe 1957, we wound up going down to DeKalb Avenue and Flatbush. And you got off the train, and it seemed like every kid in the city was there, thousands and thousands of kids. And we got online, and we went into, your heart was pounding, and you went into the theater. I went in, and Chuck Berry was on the stage and playing Maybelline, and Alan Freed, came out at the opening of the show wearing a plaid sport coat and in front of a 20-piece orchestra. And that was really the birth of rock and roll. Mm-hmm. And many years later, so I was about 14 years old. And then I'll just skip to when I was doing American Hot Wax. American Hot Wax was a movie that recreated the Alan Freed show and an biography of Alan Freed. And I was the music director of that show, and we dressed the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles to look like the Brooklyn Paramount. And we had Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, and that was part of the show. And then I had to recreate certain groups for the show. And one of the groups that I created was the Planetones. And we were there for about a month. And in speaking to Chuck Berry, he told me this incredible story. He says, when I came, first of all, they made period clothing for him, so they dressed him in the 50s suits. And Tim McIntyre, who was playing Alan Freed, Chuck Berry actually, he was so into it that he looked at Tim McIntyre and he thought he was Alan Freed. And they had this incredible interaction. And he said to me, when I came to Brooklyn, he says, when I first got a call from Alan Freed to come to Brooklyn, he says, I was booked someplace in Missouri or down in Mississippi. And he says, I thought there'd be something in it. So I decided to come to Brooklyn. And I have this visual of Chuck Berry getting off of a bus and carrying his guitar case down Flatbush Avenue over to the Brooklyn Paramount Theater. And he also had never seen anything like it. He went into the theater and he went up to the 10th floor, which was where the dressing rooms were. And he told me he looked out the window to see the line around the block. First of all, I guess when he got to the Brooklyn Paramount coming up the street, it's the size of a whole block. It's the size of a city block. And he was used to playing in these little tiny clubs. And he said he leaned out the window and he had maybe he had a Brownie Hawkeye. You remember what that was? A Brownie Hawkeye? It was a camera.
Yeah.
You'd have to buy film in a drugstore and you'd have to roll it. And he started to take pictures of the line. And when he went on stage, to me, he didn't really understand his significance. And he just went out on the stage like he would be going out on the stage every night. But as soon as he came out on that stage, the thousands and thousands of people that were in that audience let out a roar that gave him an identity that he never even realized that he probably had with people. So to me, and they did that for all of the people. They did it for Jerry Lee Lewis. They did it for Screamin' Jay Hawkins. They did it for the Five Satins. They did it for the Moonglows. And it empowered these people. And to me, it was that moment that really created the spark that we wound up knowing as rock and roll. It was that moment in Brooklyn. So, just to have been there as a kid and then to have heard, Chuck Berry tell me that story, it just sort of brought two worlds together in a moment of understanding what that was, not only for us as kids, but knowing what it felt like if you were a performer on that show. I know that was a long way around.
That was great. That was great. Tell us about American Hot Wax. I mean, of course, in that movie, Jay Leno and Fran Drescher. And tell us about that beautiful scene, which my favorite scene, of you and the Planetones and doing "Come Go With Me." Tell us about that experience.
Oh, that was so great. The director, Floyd Mutrix, was into improvisation. So we basically knew what song we were going to do. We picked the key, and I had just great musicians. I try to remember some of their names. Paul Griffin, who was the greatest and a session musician on all the early rock and roll records. He played on all of the Scepter records, the Shirelles and Chuck Jackson. And he also, when Burt Bacharach came to Scepter to produce Dionne Warwick, he wouldn't do a recording unless Paul Griffin was available to play the piano. So Paul Griffin is the piano player on Come Go With Me and also in the Hot Wax Orchestra. And man, there was a very famous sax player who was also in that scene and played the Del Vikings sax solo note for note. I wish I could remember his name now, but and so we called up Richard Perry, who is probably one of the greatest record producers of all time. And Richard Perry was pretending to be a character from those days that owned a record company, maybe High Weiss or George Goldner or Al Silver. I don't know if you're familiar with those names. These are the guys that owned those record companies that all of these groups were on. And so Richard Perry is the record producer. Jay Leno, Fran Drescher, they're all part of the scene. And Richard Perry, so I come in and with the Planetones, with Bruce Sedano, Eddie Hokinson, and Joe Esposito, and me. And I start singing, I love you, darling, come and go with me, which is a very kind of lazy version of it. And Perry says, man, come on, let's pick it up. And he says, give me 5 doms and a domby doobie. And which is dom, 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 domby doobie. And so he counts it off, and Paul Griffin picks up, goes right into tempo, and boom, we do it. And that was a moment of inspiration, and that's how that scene happened.
Wow. You worked in so many movies too. I mean, Eddie and the Cruises too. I mean, you've done so much and so many movies. Animal House. What was it like to work with John Belushi?
Oh boy, that was great. That was really great. I had to meet him at his apartment in Greenwich Village, and he was, I guess, feeling and basking in the adulation of being the star of Saturday Night Live. I mean, all of the things, the bees and the the samurai guy, all of his stuff was iconic. And so wherever we went, I had to bring him to Paul Griffin's house, because Paul was also the piano on the 2 songs that we recorded, Louie Louie and Money, for Animal House. And so we would go up to Paul's and we'd pick the key, and we'd have so we would be ready for the recording session. And then we would go back down into the village, and he would walk into a restaurant, and the restaurant would be packed with people. And of course he'd walk in, everybody knew who he was. And he would just sit down at somebody's table and start cutting the guy's steak. and it was cool, it was cool because everybody loved him, and it was just really beautiful to hang with him and actually make these 2 records.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What about the Brill building? I know you used to travel on the train back and forth to the Brill building. Jerry Lieber, Mike Stoller. Tell us about those guys and how you put together Jay and the Americans. You were part of that whole deal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I that was something that that was something that I was, let me think. I was about, when I was 15, we made a record. It was by the Harbolites.
Okay.
And there was me and Sandy Aguda and a girl by the name of Sidel Sherman. And we had a record out, and Cousin Brucey played it on Rate the Records when he was on, I think, WABC, where he is again now.
Right.
And so we became, celebrities in our neighborhood, and somebody knew a manager. and we wound up going to 1697 Broadway, which is the Ed Sullivan Theater building where David Letterman did the show.
Right.
But this is 1959.
Wow.
And we wound up going there. And in the office was the Mystics and the Passions and the Mellow Kings. And Jim Gribble was the manager. And there was a young guy up there by the name of Paul Simon, who was also an aspiring songwriter, and Al Cooper, and a guy named Stan Vincent, who wound up writing songs for the Earls. He wrote "Ooh Child" for the Five Stair Steps. And the guy, the lead singer of Hushabye, was out of the group at that time. So they had a replacement for him. And the replacement was Jay Traynor. So we started to hang out with Jay. And we decided, you know what, why don't we start our own group? We'll be Jay Traynor, Sandy, myself, and a friend of Sandy's named Howie. And we wound up, a guy that I knew in our neighborhood by the name of Terry Phillips was at Jerry Lieber and Mike Stola's office in the Brill building. And Jerry Lieber and Mike Stola in those days were the greatest songwriters and the greatest record producers. They wrote Hound Dog. They produced it with Big Mama Thornton.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wrote Yakety Yak, Charlie Brown, Searchin', Love Potion Number 9. If you just recite the words to Love Potion Number 9, I took my troubles down to Madame Ruth. You know the gypsy with the gold cap tooth. She's got a shop down on 34th and Vine, selling little bottles of Love Potion Number 9. That's an unbelievable imagination. Well, Terry Phillips got us an audition up there, and we worked with him for a while. And one of the songs that we sang, which was an a cappella version of the Five Keys, Wisdom of a Fool. I'm taking you guys back.
Whoa.
I love it.
Okay.
Man, I love it too.
And we learned it. We learned it a cappella. And they basically liked it, and they signed us up. And I have to tell this little aside story. So we went back, and we were getting ready to record, and they basically, I don't know, something happened, and they said, well, I don't think we can record you guys. So we were shattered. And I wound up going home, and my mother said, what's the matter? So I told her what had happened. She says, you go back there tomorrow and you tell them he can't do this to you. And like the next day when I got up, I took the train back into Manhattan, and I went up to their office, and they said, yeah, what do you want? And I said, my mother told me you guys can't do this. And so they looked at each other. I guess I hit a chord inside of them, and they said, all right, tell the guys to come back. And we came back, and we recorded Tonight from West Side Story. And then a couple of months later, we recorded She Cried and Dawning. And I tell you, recently, I've been listening a lot to the early Jay and the American stuff. And if you listen to She Cried, there's a 17-year-old kid singing that song. It's Jay Traynor. Wow. He's killing it. He's killing it. And his vocal performance on that song, is the reason why it's a huge hit. Of course, their production is also brilliant. And that was the start of our career as Jay and the Americans, because of that vocal that he did. And Jerry Lieber and Mike Stola, were the shepherds for our, early record making. And but in those days, if you followed history, you knew that if you didn't have hits in those days, like Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, like the Flamingos, like the Moonglows, like the Dubs, like people like the Chantels, then you basically were out of the business. It was over. So we didn't have any more hits. We had made a couple of more. We made a few more records with Jay Trainer, which were really great.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, they weren't hits, and he needed to support his family. And the rest of us, I think, wound up going back to school for about 10 months, but it was already in our blood. So we said, let's, we called Jay Trainer, and he had moved on. He didn't want to do it. And we had had another member in the group, Marty, at that point, and he knew he had grown up with Jay Black, and which isn't his name, but he became Jay Black. And Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller had a song that they originally recorded with the Drifters called "Only in America," and they thought, well, it's not real, like no African American is ever going to grow up to be president. So they said maybe we'll give it to Jay and the Americans, and they did. And Only in America became the first hit that we had with Jay Black, and then it led to going to other producers. We wound up going to Artie Ripp, and he produced "Come a Little Bit Closer" and "Let's Lock the Door," and then we wound up going to United Artists, and Jerry Granahan produced
Sure.
the next record, which is "Caramia," which was an anthemic, and all over the country, all over the world. And we wound up going to England, and we wound up going to Paris and performing on TV there. I remember we went to England and we played with Tom Jones and the Kinks and Marianne Faithfull. And, so pretty much that lasted for many, many years. We wound up in the last incarnation of Jay and the Americans. The guys in the band were Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, and they played on a couple of the records the last records they didn't play on. In 1969, we had our biggest record, which was "This Magic Moment," and then a couple of years, about another year later, we had a record that I do believe they played on, which was "Walking in the Rain," and then we did the "Capture the Moment" album, which they were the arrangers on.
Mhm.
And basically, we, I guess, it had run its course, and we all kind of jumped ship. I mean, there's other stories that took place at the El Carib, but we'll leave those out.
Kenny, I got a question for you. Not to take you away from what you're saying. Excellent stories. But do you think the resurgence of doo-wop is because of the harmonies, the era, the people, the songs, just like you were talking about with Jay and the Americans? Do you think it's just that's why it's never going to go away? It's going to be as big as the Beatles always?
It's interesting. I of course am so in it that I don't really know, and I just been working on a documentary called Heart and Soul, which addresses that very subject. But I did an interview pretty much like this in England a while back with two guys, and I think that I had sent them some of the materials for the film Heart and Soul, which isn't out yet. I'm just about finishing it up. And they saw a scene, where I sing with the original teenagers in a parking lot. And they were so blown away by it. And these are two music fans. They know Led Zeppelin, and they know the Who, and they know the Kinks, and they know the Beatles and the Rolling, all of the stuff that came out of England. But they didn't know anything about this.
Oh, wow.
And the fact that they saw it, and they said, there's no instruments. you guys are just singing harmonies, and it blew them away, and it made me realize that there's something so unique about it. Not that we took it for granted, but it was like it was it was something that evolved out of the fact that a lot of these guys in the streets didn't have money to buy instruments, and they didn't play instruments, so emulated the sounds of horns. In the old records, there'd be horn like doo-wop, ooh-wop, and so they would imitate that, and so they created an art form that really never got its due. I mean, if you think about it, it only lasted a couple of years when you heard I Only Have Eyes for You and In the Still of the Night and Sincerely by the Moonglows. But yet here it is 60 years later, and somehow those songs are on commercials, they're in movies, and they have a life of their own at this point. And I don't think there are any young people, that can actually reduplicate the vibe or the sound of those songs. You listen to the backgrounds of the Moonglows or the Flamingos. I mean, forget it. It's from another dimension, really. The blend, the way they hold their mouths, the way the harmony, the oohs come out of their mouth. It's an unspoken camaraderie that you'd have to live it to really, you know, be able to do it.
Sure. What was it like opening for the Beatles? That must have been a thrill for you guys.
Well, I didn't think it was going to be a thrill because, in those days we were emulating the vocal groups of the time. We were into the Moonglows, and we were into the blow harmony and the sound of that. And like in Brooklyn, the only guys that you knew, I mean, it's so naive to even say it, but the only guys that you knew that played instruments were playing in a Holiday Inn. And in the lounge at a Holiday Inn, it wasn't cool, and I remember seeing these guys on Ed Sullivan. And I thought, they're a guitar band. I mean, of course, they were brilliant, and what they wound up doing is extraordinary. But what they were doing was really emulating the same music that we were, except they liked Buddy Holly. They liked Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran, and that. And they like Carl Perkins, and so we were more focused on the blow harmony guys, and they were more focused on the guys who played. As a matter of fact, I read a story when the Everly Brothers came to play in England, who were the hugest that could be, and of course the Beatles, borrowed their harmonies from that, and they were on TV, and like the Beatles were like they had their heads like glued to the screen, watching their fingers, because there was no tape. It was like one time down the road, you would either pick up on what they were playing, because there was no tapes to replay it. So I didn't really think, I didn't know what to think, but they were on Ed Sullivan and the people were going crazy screaming. And then we wound up taking a train down to Washington, D.C. And, there they were, like sitting at a dais, like surrounded by, I don't know, 50, 60 newspaper people. In those days, you'd never see anybody being interviewed by the press. Nobody, they never interviewed the Flamingos. They never interviewed Chuck Berry. They never interviewed any of those people. It didn't mean anything. but when there it was. And then afterwards they didn't, they were so unassuming. They were hanging out with us. They had heard about us, because the record was a hit in England, or the Ronettes they knew, and the Ronettes knew us from the Murray the K show. So it was cool. And then we came on stage, and the place, they were screaming, and they knew the songs. And then, but when the Beatles came on, it was a sound that I had never heard in my life. It was like a roar that went up. Like I'd always imagined that was what Ruth hit his 60th home run. Maybe it was that. But they went up there and they plugged into these little amplifiers, and you couldn't really hear anything because the crowd was screaming for the whole time they were on the stage. The crowd was screaming, and they would scream louder when they would wiggle their heads, and the Beatle haircuts would wiggle. That was when the crowd went even crazier. But as far as the music goes, you really couldn't hear
anything. Yeah.
And the next day, we took a train back from Washington to New York with them. And I remember when the train was pulling into the Penn Station, you saw like it was a scene out of A Hard Day's Night.
Wow.
There were thousands of people there waiting. And I remember the door opened and we were getting ready to get out, and they said, "Oh, it's only Jay and the Americans." And the crowd parted and let us walk out through it was like the Red Sea parted, and we walked out through the crowd. I caught a cab back to my house in Brooklyn on Coney Island Avenue.
Wow.
And I sat there and I thought, like, what just happened? And here it is all these years later, when it's this significant, the fact that we were there is I'm able to tell you guys it.
So amazing. What about Professor LaPlano? How did that come about with the Planetones?
Oh, I'm wearing his glasses. These are Professor's glasses. I was I had made this album with Joel Dorn called Vance 32, which was an eclectic album that had the original Looking for an Echo on there. Mm-hmm. And unbeknownst to me, these people in LA had heard the song. And a friend of mine, I was staying at his house, Don Phillips, and he actually brought it over to the producers of the film, where Floyd Mutrux was the director. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, this guy might be the right guy to be the music director of our film. We're going to restage the Alan Freed show at the Brooklyn Paramount. So I wound up. They flew me out there, and then they picked me up in a car, and a guy in the transportation pool picked me up. I said, "What's the transportation pool?" He says, "Well, there are these cars that work for the studio." He says, "I've been doing it." He says, "It's been in my family for three generations. Like if you don't know that there's a job as like being in a transportation pool." So he drives me there, and I drove through the gate, and you see the fake sky, and then you see all these fake streets. And I wound up going to an office and had a meeting with them, and they hired me to do it. And it was wild, and I wound up having to put the band together, and I wound up having to put call Chuck Berry, and I wound up putting different groups together. Mm-hmm. And we had a truck, a 24-track truck. In those days, you had big tape, and there was 24 tracks, and you'd mic everything, that would go through the truck, so we could do the film, do it live. And they said, "Hey, we need a group. We need, because shooting Come Go With Me was the last day of shooting at the at the on the movie. That was the last day of shooting, but the Brooklyn Paramount scenes at the Wilton Theater were in the at the beginning of the show, and they said to me, we need a group, and I said, well, I used to sing, maybe I could do it, and so I called a friend of mine, Vinny Poncia, to find out if he wanted to do it, and he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to cut his hair and everything. So he says, call these guys the Brooklyn Dreams, and he called them up, and they came up, and we rehearsed, and we hit it off. We're still good friends. As a matter of fact, we just did a song on YouTube. It's called Brave Companions that we wrote. And you see a reunion with Vinny Poncia and the Brooklyn Dreams and me.
Awesome.
On their Brave Companions. Anyway, so it was just another thing, just do it. So that was it. They cut our hair. We got these suits, and I got the glasses, and that's how that happened.
So cool. Not many people know you were the musical director for Saturday Night Live. Tell us about that. And you also helped get some of the guests on the show. Tell us about some of those guests you helped get on the show.
Well, yeah, I was. The picture you had just shown, I was on there. That was in 1976. I was on there as a guest artist, and I guess they kept me in mind. And when there was changing the performers, they called me to be the music director, and I had to hire people. Put the band together. I had David Sanborn and Dr. John in the band, Alan Rubin, and I wanted to bring on, the first person that I wanted to bring on was James Brown. It was 1980, and their careers were, they didn't have so many big hits anymore, and so we reached out to him. And I hired him because in 1966, Jane the Americans were in the James Brown Review for 2 weeks at I think it was the Brevoort Theater in Newark. And every night I would go, every day I would watch him do 5 shows. If you go on the Tammy Show, TAMI, 1966 on YouTube, you'll see James Brown and the Famous Flames doing something that where Michael Jackson got it from, where everybody got it from. Just brilliant. And I would watch him every day for 2 weeks, 5 shows a day. And so when I brought him on the show, I don't know if he even remembered me or whatever, but we put James Brown on that show. And then also Aretha Franklin. And then also somebody had turned me on to Prince, and we hired Prince, and that was his first show.
Wow.
First show ever. You want me and my brother to do a song for
Absolutely. We'd love that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. You ready, Norm?
Whenever you want to, Kenny.
Norm, you want to say hello to everybody? Turn around. Let them see you. Here's my brother.
I know.
We could do another one later. We'll see how much time we got.
As much time as you want, up to 2 hours.
No.
We're doing an hour, so you want to do an hour and a half? That's fine.
We could do it another time. How's the mix? You hear the piano?
I hear it.
I'll start to sing, and if it's not... You're my love, you're my angel, you're the girl of my dreams. I'd like to thank you for waiting patiently. Daddy's home, Daddy's home to stay. How I I've waited for this moment to be by your side. Your best friend wrote and told me you had teardrops in your eyes. Daddy's home. Daddy's home to stay. It wasn't on a Sunday. It wasn't on a Tuesday afternoon. I made a promise that you treasure. I made it back home to you. How I've waited for this moment to be by your side. Your best friend wrote and told me you had teardrops in your eyes. Daddy's home. Daddy's home to stay. I'm not 1,000 miles away.
Yeah. So awesome. So awesome. Wow. What an honor to have Kenny on the show with us tonight. You know, Kenny, I wanted to ask you also about Lance, your son. He's part of the Planetones. Lad, I'm sorry. Lad. Tell us about Lad, working with Lad.
Well, you know, just to be able to sing with your son is just such a wonderful, wonderful thrill for me. And when, unfortunately, you know, the pandemic, as you know, kind of shut everything down. And we used to get to see each other just about every week because we played a lot in New Jersey and, you know, all over the country, really. And so it's just I can't really put it into words, but it's just something, you know, real special. And also playing with my brother is really a lot of fun. You know, something about, you know, I think about the Everly brothers. There's something about family that you don't have to, it's just, you know, a nod of the head or a look in the eye, and then basically, you know, have that same visceral feeling
Right.
that you have. And I sing a couple of duets with Lad, and, you know, just the blend is just really beautiful.
Sure. You do so many great covers. I mean, I saw you did a cover of Heartbreak Hotel.
Yeah.
Was Elvis an influence on you at all?
Oh God, I have a real, you know, when I did a movie called Heart of Dixie in 1988, 89, something like that. And I lived in Oxford, Mississippi for 4 months. And I used to go down to Graceland a few times.
Wow.
And, you know, see that. But in I would say 65, we, Jay and the Americans, were playing in Memphis. And we played at, you know, some big arena. And after the show, one of Elvis's posse came over to me and he said, Elvis would like you to come back to, you know, see him at the house.
Wow.
And I said, nah, I can't make it. I gotta catch an early plane. And I thought to myself, years later, what hubris, you know, what arrogance that I don't know what I was thinking, you know. I just thought, well, you know, Elvis is done and we're on the, I don't know. I don't think it was that, but I don't know. I passed on it, which is, I'm not proud to admit that, but he didn't have an effect on me at all.
Uh-huh.
When I recorded that song. I recorded that song basically, I I was just sitting around, and I was just sitting around, fooling around with the guitar, playing some chords. I don't know what. Since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. At the end of Lonely Street, Heartbreak Hotel, and I'll be so lonely, babe. I'll be so lonely, baby. I'll be so lonesome I could cry. It just seemed like a ballad.
It did.
You know? And so it was, it's a sad story. And so that's how it happened.
Amazing. Doc, what do you have for Kenny?
I can't hear Doc.
Doc, I think we lost your audio for some reason. All right.
What were some of the artists that you actually produced or performed with?
Oh, well, the one person that I did make a record with was John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. We did the music for Eddie and the Cruises, and John is a great guy. All the guys are, really beautiful people, and the story is that about one day, let's see, it's around 1984. I'm walking down the street in Greenwich Village, and I passed the Bitter End, and I had always gone in there, and I figured, just let me go in and see who's there. So I go in, and John Cafferty is on the stage, with Mike Antunes and Gary guitar, and Kenny Silva and Pat Lupo and Bobby Catoya, and that was it. I enjoyed it, and I left. And about a month later, I'm at a get together or a party, and there's a guy there's getting ready to do this movie, Eddie and the Cruises. His name is Marty Davidson. He had done Lords of Flatbush, and we started to talk, and he says, I'm doing a movie in South Jersey, and I said, oh yeah, I used to play down there in Wildwood with Jay and the Americans at the Beachcomber. We played there with the Modern Redcaps and the Isley Brothers for like two weeks, and 1962, and Steve Gibson and the Modern Redcaps, and you have to do 3 shows a night, every night, 7 nights a week. And I said, I have a lot of pictures from there. And he says, oh, why don't you, come by the production office and show them to me, show our set designer. Okay. So I went there, and he says, let me play you the music for Eddie and the Cruises. So he played the music, a couple of songs, and he says, what do you think? So I said, it's no good. So he what do you mean? I said, like, it sounds like it was written by, like a guy that doesn't know who the real Eddie and the Cruises should be. It sounds like it was written by like a jingle writer, like a guy who writes commercials. So he says, well, what do you think it should be? And I said, well, I'm not sure, but he gave me the screenplay, and I wound up going home. And that night when I was reading the screenplay, every time that scene came on with Eddie and the Cruises, I'm picturing John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, because they were the real Eddie and the Cruises, the real deal. And if you want a movie to work, it's got to be real.
Right.
So I come back and I tell him, and he's he didn't know me, so he didn't know if I was right or wrong or whatever. And as it turned out, Cafferty was playing in New Jersey at a bar, and I bring Marty Davidson and the production guys and the producers from Hollywood and all this stuff, and we go to a place and they're doing Wild Summer Nights, and everyone's going Wild Summer Nights, wow, and they're going crazy because they say, yeah, this is it, and so they hired me and them, and we did all the pre-records, and as a matter of fact, one of the pre-records that we did, along with Wild Summer Nights and what's it called, Tender Years and On the Dark Side, was we had to create a scene where they wrote On the Dark Side on top of the roof of the club that they played in, Tony Mart's. And so that's a scene that where the word man Tom Berenger starts playing a riff, and he starts playing a song, and he says, no, it's got to go like this. And Michael Pare picks up the guitar and he starts playing the chords, and then Mike Antunes joins in with the saxophone, and you see actually On the Dark Side being written on that in that scene in the movie. So that scene, to me, like the scene in American Hot Wax, are both unique and inspirational.
I'd like to talk about your website. I mean, so many great CDs, DVDs available. Kenny Vance and the Planetones.com. Is that where they can get most of your music, DVDs, and also some cool T-shirts and hats as well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how you do it. If you want to, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful.
So awesome. It's such a great honor to have you on the show, Kenny. I really do appreciate you coming on with us, and thank you for taking the time out and singing with us. So awesome.
Great.
Doc, any parting shots?
Yeah, Kenny, before you leave, and you got a couple minutes yet, is there any way you can do a sweeper for the station? We play a lot of oldies and doo-wop as well, but I do play a lot of Eddie and the Cruisers, Wild Summer Nights, and
sure. What do you want me to say?
Just say who you are and your band, the Planetones, and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio.
I'm not gonna. The one thing is, fun. I have no memory there.
It's okay. Listen, I'm a songwriter as well, and I've been working on another song, and it's part of the memory process. You forget a lot of things because you're putting other things in the memory at the time. So
I got it.
Yeah, it's whatever your name is, and of course your band, and you're listening to Jimmy Deal Show. DIELE.
Yeah, you just say Deal. That's fine.
Yeah, you could say Jimmy Deal. That's fine. Yeah, and you're listening to us on Hamilton Radio. Hamilton Radio is fine. 25 years I've been running this radio station, so
wow, great.
I play a lot of doo-wop, a lot of oldies. Go ahead.
How's it going? Is it you got a nice audience?
In 1996, 97, you got to understand, Kenny, that there wasn't a big audience around at the time because internet radio was just starting to grow. And you had a lot of naysayers. People said, oh, internet radio is not going to grow.
Yeah.
But I did this not only for myself because I was a fellow FM radio DJ, but I did this because of my daughters. I wanted them to know the real music of the 50s, 60s, and on up. So I wanted to make sure they knew the artist and the bands that I grew up with, which is like what you said, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, doo-wop, Frank Sinatra, all of them. But they weren't being played a lot on regular radio other than they're just hits. So I wanted them to be a little bit different. So when I formed the station, that's what I decided to do, was make sure that everybody had the knowledge of the music. And that was primary one. And make sure that we paid royalty rights for you guys because you're the artists that created the songs. And the songwriters and everything else. So yeah,
has it grown? Is it growing?
Oh yeah, we were over 50 million a couple of years ago. We got nominated for National Music Award for Station of the Year, and here we're in New Jersey. We got nominated 2 times for Asbury Park Music Award for Station of the Year. which was a great thing for me because we're here in Trenton. If we get nominated for Down the Shore for a radio station that's FM and we're competing with a big corporate, that's like a plus for me.
Oh, that's great. I love Jimmy too. You know, he's got such a great look. As soon as I saw him,
Jimmy's awesome.
I said, I know this guy from somewhere. Yeah.
I've been to many of your shows, and I'm sure we've met over the years. But
all right, I'm ready to do it. I'll do a couple.
That's fine. Anytime you're ready, we're recording it. So whenever you're ready, you can do it.
Hi, this is Kenny Vance from Kenny Vance and the Planetones. I actually produced the music for Eddie and the Cruisers with John Cafferty and the Beaver Brand. I'm sorry. Hi, this is Kenny Vance, and you're listening to Jimmy Deal on Hamilton Radio.
Perfect.
Hi, this is Kenny Vance, and you're listening to John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band from Eddie and the Cruisers on the Jimmy. All right. This is Kenny Vance, and you're listening to John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band on Hamilton Radio, the Jimmy Deal Show.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kenny. I also want to mention you're in the Long Island, right? Music Hall of Fame, and there's the Vocal Group Hall of Fame, and so many great places and awards that you've gotten over the years, and so well deserved. So congratulations on all that. Well, thank you so much. Okay, Kenny.
Keep it going. Keep it alive. God
Thank
bless.
you, Kenny. We will.
Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate you coming on the show. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kenny.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, another great show, Jimmy. Awesome. Just Kenny Vance. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, man, he's a legend. That's for sure. Such an honor to have him on the show. Absolutely. Next Monday, Doc, Murray, the celebrity magician, big time guy from Las Vegas. He has a show out in Las Vegas. He's going to be here with us hanging out. So that should be fun. Okay. So many more great people also on the way. We have my friend from Sha-Na-Na, Screaming Scott Simon's going to be here. Scott's such a great guy. He's going to be here with us. Freestyle artist Karina is going to be here. Lauren Massetti, she's from American Idol. Cheryl Cooley of Climax. Darcy Donovan's going to be here. So many people on the way, so stick with us. We'll give you more information on all those shows coming up, and make sure you join us Monday with Murray, the celebrity magician from Las Vegas. That's going to be a fun show. Doc, thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to tell you. I dialed it down a little bit, though, too, Jimmy, because I've been doing so much with other stuff right now. So just letting everybody else out there know that I'm a TV producer for a show that's going to be on Netflix, hopefully within the year. And I'm also now an author for a digital magazine that's on the internet. So I'm going to be working on that. Plus, I'm doing the other stuff. And then we're trying to get shows together. But you can't do too much, right?
Absolutely, man. You got to keep it going, man, and that's what you do. You keep it going, which is awesome.
We love you, brother. You stay safe, feel better, and
thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for all the well wishes from our listeners, and I'm recovering from surgery, and it's been a rough time, but thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. My friend Tom out there, of course, I hear from all the time, and so many listeners. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for everything. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.